Hello, my name is Chuck Dransfield, and I am a Los Angeles-based artist and illustrator specializing in portraiture. I felt tremendously compelled to create a special portrait of Kamala Harris. This has meaning to me because I feel like I am one of the lucky individuals here in California to have watched her rise up the ranks, almost to where I feel like I discovered her first, so to speak. Certainly before many in the rest of the nation were aware of this extraordinarily gifted woman. I saw her, to my conscious awareness, I believe the very first time I was ever really aware of her was when she was running for Senate, and there was a locally televised debate with her opponent, Loretta Sanchez. I'm very intuitive, and I felt this bolt of electricity just course through me. The chills, the goosebumps, the awareness that I was witnessing a person who was extraordinary, keen intelligence, great common sense. Certainly saw the great criminal prosecutor at work, the instincts, somebody innately gifted, very talented. Basically what I was seeing and sensing was this is someone who's going to be a major star, a superstar in the Democratic Party on the national scene in the coming years. Now, I will admit I did not have the foresight to see her rising to the vice presidency and certainly the presidency, but I knew greatness awaited her. And I also recognized intuitively a woman of great heart and tremendous caring. I believe she is the real deal. As I felt compelled to do this portrait, as you can see here, I began with the line work, which I usually sketch out in pencil, and then I go over it in ink. Much of the initial creation of the sketch I have left out here because it's very difficult for me to hold a phone and draw and paint at the same time, at least for parts where it requires tremendous concentration and focus, and that's definitely the case with the initial sketching. Yes, I have tried those overhead stands and things. Before you ask me on that, the ring lights and stuff, I can't get it to aim properly. And I found what works for me is just to sit here, draw and paint, and hold my phone overhead as best I can. And sometimes my hand even moves the camera out of the frame and stuff because I'm just not aware because I'm so involved. So I felt it was important to get the initial sketch done, but I saved some elements here. As you can probably guess, I love drawing hair. I love line work. I love the exquisite beauty of line. And yes, there is a certain amount of precision here I wanted to have to convey the portrait. But hair also allows one to be a little more abstract, at least speaking for myself. When I'm doing line work with hair, I can take a few more liberties, be a little more playful, let the channel flow through me, because I strongly believe that the power of line captures energy, captures the essence of emotion and feeling. It's those things you can't tangibly explain in words, but I can certainly show you. So yeah, it's a lot of fun to draw hair, and especially Kamala's hair. I wanted to capture that energy. This was from a photo taken of her the night she debated Donald Trump. Literally met him on stage for the first time. Walked over, shook his hand, Kamala Harris, let's have a good debate. Well, she had a good debate anyway. Better try to keep my political opinions to myself here, but I thought basically what I saw in the debate with Donald Trump was the same magnificent woman I saw back in 2016 running for the Senate here in California, debating Loretta Sanchez. So I wasn't surprised to see that element of her come out. Very much there. She is a gifted debater, and furthermore, she was extremely well prepared. As competent as she is, she still took several days. It's my understanding it was, I think it was a hotel in Pennsylvania where she sequestered herself away with trusted advisors, and they actually set up a full mock television set with complete television lighting, cameras, everything. I think they even had her dress as she was going to dress, hair. They treated it like dress rehearsals. And I know from my theater background, there's a great merit in that, because when you're performing on stage, you want to be very, very comfortable with what you're doing. You want to just own it so you can just allow it to live and breathe. So I suspect she was taking that approach with dress rehearsals, even with the lighting, just to get very comfortable and acclimated with it to the point where it was second nature. And some may say, well, what's the big deal about television lighting? Well, I can tell you, having done stage, having done a little bit of film work, television, those lights overhead are extremely harsh and glaring, and they're hot. They're hot, typically. I still remember when I was a teenager doing a stage play, and I was in the opening scene. We didn't have a curtain for the stage. We just had the lights suddenly go on. So here I am. I'm in the opening scene. I'm sitting at a desk facing the audience in the dark. Well, anybody who's had like a flash go off in their eyes or be in the dark and suddenly have very bright lights come on abruptly knows what that's like. I mean, I literally could not open my eyes. It was embarrassing. I was on stage from an audience and I had this whole monologue, and my eyes were half closed and I was fighting to get my eyes open, but because of those bright lights. So I know that's what she was trying to get comfortable with. And well, it worked, because she was extremely comfortable during the debate. And anyway, that's my little story about the line work here. You may notice in my hand what appears to be a cheap Bic ballpoint pen. Yes, that is correct. I love working with inexpensive art supplies. When I was in college, I was an art major. I swear the instructors had consignment deals with the local art supply stores, because they were always recommending that we had to buy the most expensive paints, the most expensive pencils, brushes, papers, you name it. I spent a fortune on art supplies. And up until that point, before I went to college, when I was in high school, I just worked with things like number 2 school pencils, Bic ballpoint pens, cheap acrylic paints. And in my latter years, I've gone back to the basics. I have found that's truly all I ever need. The brush in my hand, I don't think I paid more than $4 for that. I'm just a set of acrylic paints. I don't know if I paid more than $10 for that. I get the results I need from basics. And it always disheartens me when I have people tell me, oh, I wish I could take up painting. I wish I could take up drawing, but I can't afford it. It's so expensive. And I try to say, you can go to the grocery store, where they have the school supplies and things, the basics, ballpoint pens, pencils, stuff like that. You can get what you need in places like that. Just go to the grocery store or something. You don't need these things. Well, I mean, I don't want to say you don't need them, because if it really helps an individual to work better, if that's what it takes, then fine. But I had this argument with someone. His teacher insisted the class had to have this $200 sable paintbrush. And he was lamenting about the cost. And it was a friend on Facebook, and I wrote him back and I said, but you don't need a $200 sable brush, I promise you. And I showed him examples of my art, and I said, there's probably a brush here, not one brush here, that costs more than $5. It's BS that you necessarily have to have something like that. But then I was reminded, I love to journal write. And I love to write with this Mont Blanc fountain pen I have that cost about $1,000. I know, outrageous, crazy, but I love it. I hold that pen. It feels abundant. It feels rich. It feels elegant. It inspires me. So if it takes that $200 brush to inspire you, do whatever works for you. But I just want you to know that I'm working with very basic and inexpensive materials here. And I want to teach that you can get great results. Much like I like to write in a journal with a pen and paper, just plain old pen and paper, no computer keyboard, anything like that. It's because it slows me down. You know, I can type very fast. I mean, I know some would say 70 words a minute is not that fast, but for me, that's fast. But I like the process of being thoughtful as I write my words to paper and letting it channel through my soul and letting that energy come through. Well, that's very much what it's like to do a painting like this. This is all condensed down into a series of clips, but I have quite a few hours in this piece. And it's a slow, laborious process, a joyous process, but slow and laborious, and deliberately so. Painting with watercolor. A big mistake people make is putting too much color down on the paper, too much paint on the paper, going too dark. And then they wonder why their watercolors end up all muddied up. I had a wonderful teacher in high school who taught me the basics of watercolor and made me fall in love with it. The secret is, as I'm showing here, is to paint very light, thin layers. You allow each one to dry, and then you put more thin layers on top of that, and more, because the paint is translucent. And as you build these layers, you get a nice sense of depth. And I feel it starts to even look more realistic. But it's patience. Now, a trick of mine, which I did not show here, is sometimes I will get out my hairdryer, my blow dryer, and just, dry the paint on the page. And it takes about 30 seconds to do that. And then I go on to the next color and the next color. And that helps me to be more patient. Because yes, it can be boring, literally watching paint dry, and it can take quite a while. And I think this is the downfall for a lot of people trying to paint in watercolor. They lose their patience. So that's a trick that works very, very well for me. But just be mindful, put down light, subtle layers, and just build and build and build. It takes time. I know of no way around that. Now, other artists may disagree with me, but this is the technique that I have found works for me, and this is what I'm sharing with you. I love painting in watercolor, and I get disheartened when people tell me, oh, I can't do watercolor. I don't like watercolor. It's too hard. And I say, no, it's not. You're perceiving it as being hard. If you'd let me spend some time with you, I'd be happy to teach you, and I can show you. I can show you how joyous it can be and fun, and you can get great results. I wanted to show that here. I will be forever grateful to my high school art teacher, Mrs. Susan Shaw. I came from such a tiny little town that we didn't have junior high school. You went from seventh grade you went to 8th grade, which was high school in my town. So it was my high school teacher in the 8th grade, and I was 13 years old. And I will never forget the day she pulled up the chair beside me and began to teach me the basics of watercolor. And she broke it down in such a common sense way. She said, first of all, have yourself a big glass of water and a roller paper towels beside you. And what you're going to do, you put your paint down, then you dip your paint in the water and you wipe your brush. She said, constantly clean your brush. Constantly, get in the habit. Constantly clean your brush while you're doing your watercolors. And that's another way to avoid that muddiness and oversaturation that a lot of people do with watercolor and why they get discouraged. Constantly clean your brush. It's such a common sense thing. But I wrote her a few years ago. I wrote her a letter of appreciation because I think a lot of our teachers just never got the appreciation they deserved and deserve to get letters from their students saying, this is what you meant to my life. And I wasn't joking when I said one of the best pieces of advice I ever got in my life was constantly clean your brush. And when she wrote me back a lovely letter also, and in her closing line, and she said, oh, by the way, constantly clean your brush. But the reason I make such a big deal out of that is I was an art major at Virginia Commonwealth University. At the time, I think it still is, but at the time it was regarded as one of the best schools of the art in the nation. School of the arts, I should say. And in all the painting and illustration classes I had, not one teacher ever advised constantly clean your brush. And this is not audacity on my part by any means, but I was taking an illustration class and we were working on watercolors. And typically everybody in the class was turning out these muddied up messes. I was the only person in the class turning out these halfway decent watercolors. And the instructor said, why is it you can do this and nobody else? And I said, Susan Shaw, my high school art teacher, this is what she taught me. And I mentioned everything. He said, take over the class. Come on, tell us what you were taught. And so I told the class, have a glass of water beside you and a roll of paper towels. Put down just a little bit of color at a time. Put down thin, translucent layers, because Mrs. Shaw said it should always have a fresh quality to it. Put down thin layers and constantly clean your brush. And now I did admit to the class I also would take my blow dryer at home and dry my layers, which I've actually had teachers not like that piece of advice. Once I even took my blow dryer to class. Oh, that did not go over well with the instructor, but nonetheless, and I don't say it out of audacity, I was the only one in class who was turning out decent watercolors. And this was my experience, and I was glad to share it, and I'm happy to share it right now. I almost want to make it a mission because watercolor is so much fun. There's so much joy in it. And it's not just watercolors, it's sketching with pen and ink, pencils, crayons, whatever. It's such a gift to have, to take with you wherever you go. I am never, ever lonely because I have things like this. I can always pick up a pen and just start drawing or writing. In fact, I've often, when I've been on an airplane or something where I know I've had to sit for several hours, I just always make a point to bring a pen and a spiral bound notebook. And often that's all I need because I can write and I can draw and I am enthralled for many hours. It's all I need. I can just go into my own world, into my own zone. And it's such a lovely place to be. And when I'm doing a portrait such as this, I love to tap into the energy of the soul of that person. That's one of the my favorite things about doing portraits. I'm so sensitive to energies within souls. And I can tell you all the hours I worked on this, it just reinforced my feelings that this is a very good soul. This is a good woman with integrity. She's the real deal. I feel that. I really feel that about her. And I could just feel her with me. I can be so audacious as to say that even, but I could feel her presence with me while working on this. And I could only see that as a great honor, truly a privilege. The way I feel about my artistic abilities, I do not have an ounce of ego about it. I do not have arrogance about it. Sometimes I even speak of myself in the third person when I'm working. I often feel that way, and I look at my artwork. It's like somebody else did it after it's done. But I feel that any of us who have talent, we're deeply blessed, and we are caretakers of this talent that's been entrusted to us. We're caretakers, we're guardians, and we have a responsibility to use it to the highest of our ability. And I like to believe for the highest good of others. And so that's where I come from when I do my art. And this is a piece I've created. I've been trying to get it to the Democratic Party. I've had a lot of leads, made a lot of phone calls, Sacramento, Los Angeles, Pasadena. I might call New York, Chicago. So far, I'm having trouble getting anybody to respond to me, but I think that's just because it's difficult when they're being deluged. So I like to believe whatever is for the highest purpose and good of this painting will come. And maybe it's nothing more than this video to show you how I created it and did so with great, great love and affection. And I'm sorry if at times it clashes with people's political beliefs. I try so hard to avoid that. I learned a difficult lesson during the 2016 election between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump on Facebook and social media, where I got into a lot of idiotic arguments with total strangers. You want to talk about going down a rabbit hole? A pointless rabbit hole. And let's face it, we're not going to change other people's political opinions, and they're not going to change ours. So I consciously strive to avoid being political in public forums, but I can't hide the fact that I do care greatly about this woman, Kamala Harris, and I admire her, and I have for a number of years. And I use the word real deal. I'm thinking back to a story. It was the great actress Lynn Whitfield, and I hope she won't mind me telling this, but she brilliantly portrayed the great entertainer Josephine Baker in an HBO movie, I think more than 30 years ago. She won an Emmy, a richly deserved Emmy for that. And of course, I was thrilled to meet her in person and tell her how much I loved her performance. But we got to become acquainted with each other, and she'd tell me stories. And she was friends with Barack and Michelle Obama. And she was invited to stay with them in the White House. And she was there the day of the Sandy Hook shooting. And she told me Barack and Michelle were both crying, and they got on their knees and they prayed. And Lynn Whitfield said to me, trust me, no matter what people say about them, I can tell you, I know them. They're the real deal. They really have heart. And that's the sense I get from Kamala Harris. So I want to help her in any way I can, but in doing so, share my artistry with you. Another reason for my wanting to do this video, aside from the other things I've explained, it's my little way of addressing artificial intelligence, which is just proliferating into seemingly everything right now. I know it's a double-edged sword, a lot of good, a lot of bad, a lot we don't know what it's going to mean. We're still in uncharted waters. But yeah, as an artist, as a professional artist, I do get bothered when I see people, quote unquote, creating these art pieces with artificial intelligence. And I'm not totally demeaning that, because art can be expressed in many, many ways. And if that's the vehicle of choice for people that works for them, then hallelujah, go for it. But I just don't like this notion that it could potentially replace people like myself. I mean, people are saying, oh, that's impossible, that's impossible. No, but the AI is getting more and more sophisticated, and we don't know where it's going to go. So I wanted to shoot this because I have a number of artist friends, particularly on social media, that I keep in touch with. Gifted artists, wonderful painters, drawers, and they're already getting people writing them, asking them, what computer program did you use to create this? And I painted this, I drew this, this is me, this is not a computer. So yeah, I see a need for many of us artists to maybe start making videos like this just as proof. No, this comes from our heart, this comes from our soul. As you can see, this is about as low tech as it gets. About the only thing high tech about this is perhaps the video and audio itself that I've recorded. But no, this was just plain old pen, pencil, paper, paint, brush, water, and these are the stages. And yeah, I mix some mediums, like purists would say, oh, you have too much ballpoint pen here. This is more, but whatever. It's whatever it takes to get the result. You may notice toward the end when I'm doing her little lapel flag pen, because I needed to have a certain sharpness because it's so small for those little red flag lines and things. What served me best there was to get out a colored pencil and just do it that way. I see nothing wrong with mixing mediums. You may notice for her jacket, I used a low-tech magic marker, but I have found when I'm doing heavy black areas like that, I get a nice, flat, even effect that works better than paint in situations like that. And again, that's just me. And a lot of this, when people do praise me for my art, and please know I am heartfelt grateful, but I want to say to people, you have to understand, for every drawing like this, there are hundreds that I have crumpled up into balls and I have ripped apart and thrown into the trash can, sometimes after hours of work. I've been painting since I was a child, so I have more than 50 years of experience. Truly, I can honestly say that. I have my college degree in art. I was blessed to have the great Susan Shaw, my high school art teacher, who, interestingly enough, and I can say this, having gone to art school, gone to one of the best in the country, she was still the best art teacher I ever had. 85% of the techniques I use to this day, I learned from her. Now, I'm grateful I went to college. There's much I learned. College was about much more than just classes and basics like this, so I'm grateful. But a lot of my just nuts and bolts techniques came from my high school art teacher. And I've also got, as I said before, I've gone back to the basics of number 2 school pencils, Bic ballpoint pens, inexpensive acrylic paints. I use the term watercolor here, but if you know anything about acrylic paint, it's extremely versatile based on how you use it. Add a little water to it, it's like gouache. Paint straight from the tube, it's like working with oils. Add a lot of water, like I did here, you get watercolors. And so that's my medium of choice. I like acrylic because it's durable, it's fade resistant, it's far more permanent because it's a plastic polymer base. So it's far more permanent than regular watercolor. And I think also because I'm a creature of habit and I've worked with it so much, I'm very, very comfortable with it. And when you're doing something like this, I think any kind of art, you're dancing, you're playing a concerto on the piano, you're writing, any kind of art, you've got to be really comfortable with what you're doing. Hence, I was talking about Kamala rehearsing under the lights to prepare for her for the date. You get so comfortable, you don't even have to focus on things like that. You can just allow it to channel through you and be whatever it wants to be. And I'm going to say lots of times, I don't know what my finished product is going to look like. I mean, I know in this case, I was obviously aiming to make it look like the photograph, my source material. But I also, as a portrait artist, even though I like to be precise, I also believe in abstracting things a bit also. Like I mentioned with lines for the hair. In this, you can see a little bit of blue and yellow and some red and colors in her hair. Because intuitively, and I use the word intuitively, I get out of my head and I just go as I'm guided. And I'm very much striving to capture the energy of this person. And sometimes guidance will take me to a color, like blue in the hair or something, because there's just something in the subject's aura, their energy field that captures in a way I don't even understand it. But I can certainly feel it. And I like to think people feel it at least on a subconscious level. They get that. They get that. I've told this story before in other videos, probably will tell it again, but I never forgot the time the Los Angeles County Museum of Art had a major exhibit of Van Gogh paintings loaned from the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam while they were undergoing about a year of renovation. So this was a rare opportunity to see his most iconic paintings in one place. Now, many of these are things like, his sunflowers, his Starry Night, things that have been reproduced and reproduced. T-shirts, postcards, calendars, pen-up posters, you name it, reproduced and reproduced. But nothing prepared me for being in the presence of the real paintings. And what I took away from that, because I literally felt from these 100-plus-year-old paintings, waves of energy, just boom, 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 all this energy coming out from those paintings. It was life-changing for me. I don't think I'd ever grasped how much energy remains in a work of art and how it can be there hundreds of years later. It's preserved forever, that energy. You're putting that down on the paper and the canvas. So I've always been very mindful of that ever since in my life, that I'm capturing energy and in ways that can't always be explained. And sometimes it's the most subtle thing. Like a guidance will tell me, put a little line here that makes no sense, but I just put the line here, or put a slash of yellow across this person's cheekbone or something. And I can't explain it, but by God, there's an energy shift. It's there. And I'm thinking about something Barbra Streisand once said, because she's known as being a perfectionist. She's been criticized for it and maybe being too attentive to detail. But she was talking about the time she's very hands-on, and she was with the sound engineer for one of her albums at the soundboard. And she said, okay, now I want, it's multi-tracks, and she said, on this track, I want this turned up 1/2 of a decibel. And the sound engineer said, Barbara, the human ear can't even hear that. It's not going to make any difference. And she said, yes, but they're going to feel it. And when I heard that, I said, that's a woman after my heart. If I'm ever so lucky to meet Barbra Streisand, which I would love to do, I would really enjoy having a conversation with her about that, because I know she doesn't like small talk. And I thought, well, I've got a topic I'd like to talk about with her. So anyway, that's my belief. It's these subtle little things that nobody will notice. I believe you feel them. And again, that's one of the things I love about doing portraits and making art. and sharing this with you right now. It's my honor and it is my privilege. As I was talking about how I wanted to make a video proving this is not AI, this is not a computer program, this is nothing more than Chuck Dransfield's soul and a lot of trial and error experience over the years, and hopefully this proves that. But, another reason why I like to do these videos, and at the same time I kind of hate these videos, as you could see at the beginning of it, a piece of art typically like this looks like crap in the beginning when you're just laying down those base colors, when you're just sketching the thing out. Now, I always know what it's going to look like, where I'm going with it. I don't entirely know the specifics of what it's going to look like because a lot of it is a journey that I'm channeling and it's flowing through me. But I have an idea that's going to at least look like a good, competent portrait. But a lot of people don't understand that. And they will look at those beginning stages and be dismayed. I remember when I was in college, one summer I worked in a theme park. King's Dominion amusement park outside of Richmond, Virginia, and I worked as a portrait artist, and it was very cheesy. We had to wear these smocks and berets and be out in the hot sun all day long sketching people with pastels. And of course, when you do a pastel portrait, there's a technique where we would do them in profile, sketch out the profile, and then you'd lay down base colors like a flesh tone, a background color, and of course you have no choice in this matter. You have people standing behind you watching. And I can't tell you, and it wasn't just me, it was the other artists. Well, he's not very good, is he? That doesn't look anything like her. So I've always had this thing where I hate showing my art in the beginning stages, knowing people don't understand this. But I'm hoping as you watch the progressions, you see the method to my madness and how I work and how other artists work. We all have our own techniques, but I'm sharing with you mine to demystify this. I've had dear friends remind me that this is important to share. People do want to see how art is being created, and I want to show how it comes from a human being. And I guess while I'm at it, I'm going to address, because I also do a lot of canvas paintings, I've had people actually think it's like paint by number. They actually think that's how I did the paintings. Like, they weren't impressed with the fact that I had painted it. Never mind, as you can see from this video, the painting is like 90% of the work. And the creativity and the channeling and the artistry. They were impressed with the fact that I had drawn it. I had sketched it. Oh, you drew it. Oh, that's different. But they weren't impressed with the fact that I painted it. And I asked one person, well, why are you not? And she said, well, aren't you just filling in things like a paint by number? I was appalled when I heard that. And I mean, as you can see from here, it's not paint by number. Yes, you may see me filling in some spaces, laying down some base colors and blocks and things, but ultimately it's a lot of very subtle blending. It's a lot of finesse with the pen, with the brushes, with the paints, and knowing just how much paint to put down and how much not. And you may even see points where I will dab at the paint, like I intuitively know to lay it down, but then to start dabbing off the excess, lightening it up. And one of the things I know from working in this watercolor technique, these layers that I put down initially have to be a bit darker because they're going to dry lighter. But I know that because I've been painting since I was 13 years old. I know these things intuitively, so I don't even think about it. It's a lot like a cook in the kitchen. I can't cook for a damn. I'm one of those people who would burn water, but I've watched people who are so intuitive in the way they know to just grab for this spice or that spice or this ingredient. And it's beautiful because that's a lot how I work. When I'm painting, I just intuitively know I know which paint tube to reach for. I know how much paint to put down, how much not to, blah, blah, blah. I know this just from life experience. And so sometimes when people ask me to teach what I do or explain it, I have to say, I don't even know. Because I just do it. So sometimes I have to actually break down my own technique so I can explain it to people. I have to watch it myself, like a video, and say, oh, that's how I did that. Because I get so, as my friend Pam said to me, who's a gifted artist, she said, sometimes you just get lost in the sauce. You get in the flow. That's one of the things that's exciting about making original art, is being in that flow of energy. It's like a ride. And I'm this way when I'm writing. Sometimes when I'm working on a story or something, I don't know where it's going to go. And that's the fun of it. It's like I'm being taken for the ride for the most firsthand account possible, because it's flowing through me. I'm facilitating it. And that, of course, is a joy and an honor and a great privilege. And it's something I never, ever take for granted and recognize. As I have said previously, any of us who have a talent, we are a caretaker. We are a guardian for this talent. So I never feel a right to have any kind of audacity. Oh yeah, I'm proud of what I do, and maybe if I get audacious, it's because I feel I've earned it from just painting and drawing since I was a young child, more than 50 years of work. I worked my ass off in college, to get to where I am. I've worked very, very hard. It's, part of it is talent, and part of it is working the talent and nurturing it, developing it, exercising it. It's a combination of things. So the aspects that I feel are more my own doing like that, yeah, I'm very proud of it. But again, that's not to brag on it, but to just be proud of it. It's that feeling of accomplishment that is hard earned, which is a beautiful, beautiful feeling, beautiful fulfillment. And while I'm at it talking about artificial intelligence and shortcuts, I see people taking photoshopping, and as I said, I'm not criticizing that, because it's whatever works for the artist, whatever your form of expression is, that's just fine. I have a friend who insisted she could not draw or paint, but I knew she had the heart of an artist, the soul of an artist. So I bought her a little thing of acrylic tube paints, and I encouraged her to take up abstract painting. And she does the most beautiful abstract pieces that are so full of emotion. She's also a gifted photographer. So there are many ways you can express your art. You don't have to necessarily be talented in being able to just draw something. You can let it come out in other ways. Sculpting is another thing that works well for people. Just working by touch and feel. But it's such a healing, therapeutic thing for people, and it's a way to express what cannot be stated in words. That's why art can be so therapeutic for people. People may be going through emotional issues or something, or going through post-traumatic stress, trauma of some kind. They can't talk about it, but they can draw it, they can paint it. And as I said, even those who think they don't have any talent, you don't necessarily have to have a quote-unquote talent. Everybody has heart, everybody has feelings. Just let it out. Let it be whatever it wants to be. And I'm going to say this also, a concern of mine about AI, and I know this is controversial, and I've had this talk with people, but people tend to dismiss how essential creativity is for young children. This notion that we are fully programmed by the time we are 7 years old, and those first years are so essential and so formative on multitudes of levels. Our minds, our psyche, emotions, creativity. I wish people could recognize the skills, the brain skills used in creativity, how that spills over into things like architecture, engineering, mathematics, medicine, law. Creativity in children is so essential to nurture and develop. And I'm a big believer in giving kids coloring books, crayons, Lincoln Logs, Play-Doh, anything. There's a, this is my age speaking here, but I do get appalled when I see kids with their tablets and their smartphones and their video games. And I think back to when I was a kid, none of that existed. And my best friends were things like the box of 64 Crayola crayons with the sharpener in it. Oh boy, did I feel like I had won the lottery. And how I just love to play for hours and hours with things like my Legos, creating. And that's been with me my whole life. And it's one of the reasons I'm never lonely. And oftentimes if I'm feeling a little bit of despair, sadness, it's my go-to. It's my go-to. And it always lifts my spirits and grounds me. It recalibrates me. It lifts my soul. It stirs the thought process. Like working on this Kamala Harris here for hours and hours and hours, you can't help but do a lot of thinking and a lot of feeling. It's all good, people.